This is a project I've been working on with Salvo Proyecto. Salvo has shot 17 images in burst mode on a Ricoh Theta Z1. So let's take a look at the noise in the images. Not too obvious here, but when we get over to this blank wall, it's very obvious the difference between a noise stacked and a conventional shot or an HDR shot. Really clean. And because of this, sharpening is going to be very effective. And in fact, we need little to no noise reduction on this image at all. That's already been done with the noise stacking. And if we take a look, it looks very crisp and very sharp in all areas. So let's take a look at one of the images in the burst set. And we'll zoom in and take a look at the noise in particular. We're not going to worry about the color at this stage. So if we take a look at the sharpening value, Lightroom has actually added sharpening, which increases the noise. So we're going to reduce this to 0. And we're going to copy that setting to all of the DNG in the set. This is a very critical first step. And now we'll noise stack in RAW Plus. Salvo has shot 17 images. RAW Plus takes a maximum of 16, so we'll select 16, and all the images are the same. It doesn't matter which 16. You have some options to choose the first image. They're all the same. We're not going to worry. And we'll let it stack for us. Okay, that's it. It has a prefix KD RAW. There's no renaming necessary anymore before stitching. And we'll do some of our standard color adjustments that you do on any DNG. We've left this to the end. There was no point really in doing it sooner. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to stitch this stacked image. And this is going to be no problem. And we'll adjust the yaw just a little bit. And we have a very good basic image. You might want to level, and also I'm going to take a look at the flare in a separate section. But the noise is looking very good in this image. I'm going to demonstrate how to deal with some of the window flare in this image using Lightroom masks. So I'll make some rough changes to my Lightroom masks, and this is just to get something to see when I first try it. I'll try a radial filter. I actually prefer a brush over a radial mask. It's a little easier to erase. So I'll start to paint with whatever settings I have. And I'm making use of the ability to click in one location and then shift click another for a straight line. And I'll start to paint this in. Make adjustments to the painting. Paint some more. Increase the feathering. And you don't have to be too precise on this, just to get a proper overall look. It seems complicated, but it's really quite a straightforward process, and it's very flexible. So we'll paint back in here a little bit on this beam. And I'll create another mask and start working around the window. Shift click for straight lines. And try to darken this frame and perhaps adjust the tone a little bit. It's starting to look pretty good. I can adjust it after I painted a bit to get it a little more precise. And I can even increase the temperature a little bit of the painting to overcome the blue. Okay, I'll brush some more around the outside. Try to get rid of this blue. And again, I'm not going to worry too much if it's too dark to start. And work my way around the flare around the window here. Starting to look, outside of the fact it's too dark, it's starting to look like I want. And here's a cool trick. If I press the Alt key when I paint, I can go right to erase. Even though I could add another mask, I really like the ability to press the Alt key to flip to the erase mode. Again, it's a very flexible method of editing. It's kind of nice being able to do something and then change how it's applied by changing the exposure, contrast, and so on. Increase the density of my erase a little bit. Try to soften this up around the edge. And just increase exposure a little bit. That's very, very close to what I want now. Okay, so this window flare is pretty much done. This window should be a little bit easier to retouch. I don't have to deal with the beam that went over top of the other one. So I'll select my brush mask and I'll see what I can do to the image overall. I'm not going to worry about the bright patch of the window. I'll go in and I'll erase that later. So play around, roughly get what I want on the main part of the image. Darken the frame a little more. Using that shift click trick to draw straight lines. And brush away the frame a little bit. And you can go and click erase, but you can also click the Alt key to erase the mask. I like the Alt key, it's quicker. And there's that trick of shift clicking to get a straight line, and then I'll just shift click and fiddle around and erase manually in the center to get rid of it. That's getting close to what I want at this point. I'm going to erase around the outside. It's a bit dark on the wall beside the window frame. And I'm pretty much done. So I've chosen on this one to work on the equi-rectangular stitched image, but it doesn't really matter whether you do it on the stitched image or the original raw. It helps if you're working in a 16-bit TIFF on the stitched equi-rectangular. And then the final window, we'll retouch this one using a similar technique. And every once in a while I like to flip to my mask to get an idea of how smooth it is. There's a little checkbox down below the mask panel that you can turn on and off. And I'll turn it off. That looks very close except for the window itself. And I'll go to erase. Again, the trick with your scroll wheel is you can easily change the size of it, and then you can change the size of feathering by clicking the shift button and rolling your scroll wheel. So I'll paint back in the window frame to get rid of some more of the blue. And I'd estimate on this image that to get everything perfect, it's probably about a 45-minute job. And then erase back in the center of the window. Again, I don't have to be perfect at this stage. Let's see how it all looks in the final image. And I'm getting pretty close to what I want. I like to uncheck this box so that my sliders don't revert back. And here I'm going to use a mask to paint away the purple fringing at the end of this beam. I'm going to add another brush mask to deal with this purple fringing. And I'll just arbitrarily set a defringe value. And I'll add another brush mask. And see what happens when I try to brush away this fringing. It looks pretty good. And I might like to reduce the saturation of that painting a little bit more. That's the wonderful thing about working with masks in Lightroom. And this is getting pretty close to what I want. I don't like to over-process an image. That looks perfect. And one final trick, I'd like to paint a bit of sky into these blown out windows. There's no way even with HDR I would have been able to get much detail in these windows, nor would it have been worth it. So I'm going to use a brush mask with a little bit of reduced exposure. And here's the trick. I can actually paint with a color. So click on the color panel, select a blue at 100%, and start to paint with that shift click trick for straight lines. And then fill in the rest with a slightly larger brush. And that looks a little bit fake at this point. And I'm going to go and erase back into the window to give a hint of some clouds in the sky. Not much. Doesn't need much. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. But as I say, I don't like to overdo effects, so I'm going to dial this back a little bit by increasing the exposure. And here's the final image. And you may have noticed that I've also retouched out the tripod. It's actually quite easy with a tiled floor, and I'll make that a subject of a future video. And again, a huge thanks to Salvo Proietto from Sicily for allowing me to use his wonderful images. And one final thing, here are some of my channels if you wish to check them out.